Welcome to another History Wanderer video, and in this video we're going to be looking at the Rainhill Trials, which was held between the 6th and 14th of October 1829 on the nearly constructed Liverpool to Manchester Railway, which was being built by George and Robert Stephenson. There was a bit of an argument between the builders of the railway and the board of the railway as to how the cargo was to be moved along the railway. The board was in favour of using stationary engines using a pulley and winch system to drag the cargo and the passengers along the line, whereas the Stephensons were arguing for a locomotive, which is an engine on a carriage which provides motion for the wheels to move the carriage and also to pull the cargo down the line. So to see if this was efficient, the board set up 3 judges, who were Nicholas Wood, John Urpeth Radstick, and John Kennedy, and they were tasked with performing trials to see if the locomotion was an efficient way of hauling a cargo, and if it was, what was the most efficient design to pull the cargo and passengers along the line. So with this in mind, they set up 5 major points. There were more than that, but I'm just pulling out the ones which are the most important to the trials. The first one, they set where the competition was to be held. They set the dates of the competition. They set out to give only 6 months' notice to the potential competitors of where the trials were to be held. They also set the gauge of the track, which was now known as standard gauge, which at the time wasn't standard gauge, but that was set at 4 foot 8.5 inches, because that was the gauge that the actual Manchester Liverpool Railway was built on. And if we do meet, please don't try and tell me it was anything to do with Roman chariots or horses, otherwise get ready for a 2-hour lecture on how that was arrived at. They also set that the method of propulsion had to be steam. So we're going to go through each of the competitors in turn now and see how these 5 major rules affected the outcome of the trials. The first one was an unusual locomotion called Cyclopede, and basically it was a horse on a treadmill which turned cogs, which turns the wheels, but it was disqualified because it wasn't propelled by steam. The second one was Novelty, and it was actually the favourite to win the competition, even though the manufacturers of the locomotive, which was made in London and had to be transported from London to the Rainhill Trials, they only got 7 weeks' notice from when they found out the competition was to be held. And unfortunately, because it was rush built and dragged over bumpy roads over short periods of times, it suffered from minor defects and never completed the trials. Although after the trials was over, it was patched up and successfully pulled cargo in the St Helens area. The next one was Perseverance, which, through again having no road network or limited canal space to get the locomotive down, that was damaged en route, and even though they was able to get some motion from the locomotive in the last day of the trials, it never achieved anything more than 6 miles an hour, so it was disqualified. Then you've got Sans Perret, or if you come from Bolton like I do, Sans Perel. And this locomotive was a serious contender. It performed excellently during the trials. It achieved an average speed of 30 miles an hour. But in the last 2 days of the trial, the water pump failed, a cylinder cracked, and the locomotive had to be withdrawn. The fact that the cylinder was constructed by the Stephenson Locomotive Factory just outside Newcastle, who just happened to enter the Rocket into the competition, Um, the manufacturers of Sans Paris accused the Stephensons of industrial sabotage, of knowing where the cylinder would go that they was building, and it's more than likely that was the case. But now let's look at the rocket, which actually won the competition. So first of all, it was designed and built by George and Robert Stephenson. They started to design and build it before the others because they knew the trials were coming. So they had a chance to get the locomotive being built before the others even knew about it. Where the trials were held, which was only 8 miles away from a recently completed junction, which was on the Bolton to Leigh Railway, where the rocket was travelling up and down, ironing out any defects. And to simply get to the trials, all they had to do was drive to the points, flip the points, and then drive to the location of the trials. There was no need for them to go over bumpy roads or be dragged down a canal to get there, and it was already on the medium it was designed to be travelled on. And again, the gauge of the track. The Bolton to Leigh Railway was now modern day standard gauge, which was 6 foot 8.5 inches. Now, the other thing was Nicholas Wood was a very good friend of George and Robert Stephenson, and he actually designed the boiler for the rocket. So, of the 5 major points, the Stephensons were ahead of the game. Not only were they building the railway, not only did they know where the competition was going to be held, which they made sure was close to where the locomotive was trialling, not only did they have the gauge right, because they were already using the rocket on the Bolton to Leigh Railway, and not only did they have the method of production steam, and they had at least one of the 3 judges in the back pocket. So what you're effectively looking at is one of the biggest fixes in industrial history, which led to the Stephensons becoming very, very wealthy and making locomotives that were built all around the world, simply because when it comes to a competition, they cheated. And there's no way of getting around the facts they cheated. And during the reconstructed trials in 2018, Sam Paris actually performed as well as the rocket because it had no minor defects and there was no industrial sabotage. And the other trains worked well, except for the limitations to get them to the trials. So the next time you go to York and you see the rocket, and everybody marvels over how brilliant it was and how it won the Rainhill Trials, just bear in mind that the only reason it won was because the competition was a Class 1 fix. And we should be all marvelling the Sam Paris, which was a slightly heavier locomotive, went slightly quicker than the rocket, and could carry a larger load. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching and listening to it. If you've got any comments, please leave them in the section below. And please like the video and ring the little notification bell. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, enjoy your afternoon.